And we are recording with Mr. or if I'm correct, retired Lieutenant Colonel Berney Flowers. He's been on here before. And for all future listeners, today is Sunday, December 18th, 2022. Just talking about retirement, not that I'm retired, but saying how my parents are retired. I think they work harder than ever before, but I think they're happier than ever before. And just to continue with the conversation we were having just a minute ago, you said that you're kind of feeling the same.
I am thrilled to be retired. I'm thrilled to be doing what I'm doing. I am involved in politics in a way that I always wanted to get involved with, but I couldn't do so from where I was sitting in the federal government. Um, I just wrote a book. I mean, I will talk about that later,
Mm-hmm.
but the point is that I feel free to say what's on my mind,
Mm.
and that is priceless. And I
Yeah.
couldn't do that before.
Yeah, and I would imagine you probably appreciate it more now. I mean,
Oh,
you
yeah.
obviously you serve the country and and I think that probably comes with the territory is sometimes you're not sometimes, most of the time I'd imagine you just have to shut up and fall in line. Um,
Yep.
which I am incapable of doing, which is why I'm doing a podcast from my bedroom. But um but you went about it the right way. Now you're fine. Now you're retired. Now you're set, and now you can say what you want to say. Um, Now is it necessary? It's not. I wouldn't imagine it's anything like critical of your former job, but rather just in general, you're free to speak.
I am free to speak. I don't have anything specifically bad to say about my former job, but I believe that, in public service, I believe that we should be in service to humanity and specifically to our own country.
Mm-hmm.
And I got some tweaks that I think should be incorporated into what we're doing. And I'm free to try to make those tweaks happen. So
Um,
that's where I am.
and as I told you, we Bernie and I are going to do an episode in January for your new book. But yeah, real quick, plug that. Tell me what it's about, and tell everybody what it's about.
Well, if you don't mind, can you see
Sure.
this?
Bring it a little
Let me
closer.
get. Yeah.
There you go.
It,
Black
it,
values matter.
there, you can see it.
Yes,
I'm going to read you the back page of the book,
please
and then
do.
I'll shut up for a little while.
No.
The It says blacks are among the most conservative ethnic groups in America. Somebody needs to tell them that because as a group, we aren't voting like it. Most blacks I know are concerned with basic common sense issues like crime, inflation, the economy, taxes, school choice, vaccinations, etc. Most blacks I know want equal opportunity, not equal outcomes. Republicans are interested in kitchen table issues, while progressive Democrats concern themselves with trending social issues. The Democrat Party treats Black Americans as voiceless, reliable generational support. The Republican Party is not much better in its treatment of Blacks, offering few viable alternatives to progressive Democrat policies. Liberal policies sound great in political campaigns, but after several decades of unbroken political support, what has the greater Black community received in exchange for decades of undying reinforcement of progressive causes? Maybe it's time to audit our one sided political support. I offer that America's Black civil rights movement has been conflated and neutered through association with the issues of supposedly oppressed minorities. This essay is my attempt to get Black voters to understand that in the end, Black values matter. And that's it.
You've got my interest, and I'd rather you not shut up for a while because people are here to listen to you, not listen to my meandering thoughts, which they've. Uh, this is episode 1032. They've got more than 1,000 episodes of me running my mouth and acting like a moron.
Well,
So,
dude, I actually like listening to you for one. And look at this
oh,
black shirt. You recommended to me the last time I was on, always wear dark colors when you're on online like this. And so look at me. I'm
you
wearing a
are. I
black shirt. I'm
noticed that.
listening to you.
I noticed it.
Dude,
I always do. I've got like three of these shirts, and this one might be time to retire. When I start to notice holes in them, or when there's stretch marks, that's when I start to notice. but I like it. I like to kind of wear the same thing. It's less of anything to be concerned about or worried about.
Well, dude, I learned a lot from you, and that's just one of the many things I've
Oh,
learned from you.
sure. Um, I did kind of want to talk about because I know nothing about it, and but now that it's been released, is the B-21 Raider, and I know you can't talk about anything. I understand classified, blah, blah. I get all that. I'm not trying to pry with that, but I'm bringing it up because it has been officially unveiled by the Air Force. So I feel like, to an extent, there is some of the shadow has been removed. Um, for anyone that doesn't know what it is, it's the stealth bomber that looks almost identical to the B-2 Spirit. The B-2 Spirit came out in 1989. I've interviewed one of those pilots before. It is most notable because one, it looks like a UFO, and two, it costs $2 billion a piece. The newer one doesn't. I didn't know this. The Raider is named after Doolittle's raid, so I thought that was kind of cool. But in terms of, I guess, just Air Force power, earlier in this year with the alleged launch of the Kinzhal, the Russian hypersonic weapon, and I know that China's got the largest and most advanced hypersonic wind tunnel. Is this kind of obviously this wasn't built this year. It's been in development for a long time. Does this make you a little more what am I looking for?
Angry?
I wasn't going with angry. I was gonna say a little more comfortable with US air power, but let's explore that. What do you mean angry?
Well, here's the thing. We have no near peer competitor. I mean, bottom line is China, they have weapons that they basically copied from us.
Yeah.
Now that, stop me if I go too far, that hypersonic missile that they talk about in the trade magazines is real.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But that B-21 Raider is not going to do anything about that.
Yeah.
Um, when you're talking about dogfighting, dueling, dropping bombs on a foreign nation, we have the best capability in the world. Why are we spending $2 billion a copy on an aircraft when our inner cities are falling apart? While we have a rust belt that is falling apart, while we've got fentanyl coming across our borders, and the military-industrial complex is getting richer and richer and richer and richer, and but we don't have a threat that would require us to use such a weapon. And have we dropped any nuclear bombs lately?
No.
So why do we need this monstrous weapon?
Fair point. And it's not, I don't think it could even be argued that, let's take, I'll be making a lot of general brushes here, but let's take World War II, where the things we were building weren't necessarily, with the exception of the atomic bomb, weren't necessarily technological marvels. It was more so just quantity.
Yeah.
B-29s, B-17,
B-17s.
tanks, Liberty ships, just
Yeah.
P-51 Mustangs, just
There you have
copy,
it.
print, copy, paste, copy, paste. What that
Yeah.
did do was it put the average man, well, the average man was serving, it took the average woman into these factories, Rosie the Riveter, or you're
Right.
making shells. And now, granted, there's a whole larger argument of, well, should we be employing people for weapons building only? But let's just kind of focus on this. Is the argument there is, it at least it put people to work. This isn't
Yes.
even, this is such a highly esoteric, I mean, you got to have 4 PhDs to be pushing the bleeding edge of radar absorbing material and UHF. And it's like, that's all well and good. I get it. We don't live in a happy go lucky Garden of Eden world. I get it. You do need those weapons. But the polarization and the gap is getting larger and larger between any sort of put America back to work and, you know, homeless people shitting in the streets, more and more families growing up in single parent households, more and more people dropping dead with blue lips from fentanyl,
Yep.
and yet we're still doing this. And to add insult to injury, you're right. We're not fighting a Soviet Union at parity with us. We just got out of. I mean, I was just reading a book about how we are using the B-1B Lancer, a low altitude supersonic nuclear delivery vehicle meant for the Soviet Union. We were using it to like bomb motorcycle convoys in Afghanistan. Like,
It wasn't built for tactical use. An
no.
A-10 will do just fine.
Well, and that's what the whole book actually goes. It's called The Spoils of War, I believe, by Andrew Coburn, and they do just that. They talk about the A-10, and even the soldiers were going, "Why are we using the B-1B?" And there were a bunch of Air Force generals going, "Well, we've got to use it." And it's like, dude, we're using a $100,000 hammer to like
Yeah.
break open a piece of mail. It's not the case. But so it doesn't. It's nothing innovative or brave for us to sit here and talk about what's wrong with the country. I think anybody can do that. What is there any actual path to winding down or at least slowing down the military industrial complex and providing for inner cities, providing for, at least just enforcing the idea of a border? Is there any is there any real effective method to get there, or is this just you and I pontificating?
I think, I walked away from this nice, comfortable, cushy, maxed out civilian job because
Sure.
of this. We, people like us, the intelligentsia, and I like to put myself into that category, and same as you, we got to get involved. What you're doing is spreading awareness. I am trying to spread awareness. I was talking to my nieces last night. They were over for dinner. My family were running around watching the babies play and eating and having a good time. And these are educated young women, both University of Maryland graduates and bright young folks, but they didn't really understand what I was doing and why I was doing it.
Yeah.
And they've got to get not necessarily educated, but they have to understand the military and industrial complex is basically making war on the world. We are not always the good guys.
No.
And when we go overseas and drop bombs on people that are not near peer competitors to us, we're creating enemies unless we kill everybody. And
Yeah.
so one day that's going to come back to our own shores. Now, back to your original question, what can we do about it? We've got to wake people up and make sure that they understand that their votes count. One party system like we have in Maryland is only going to support the party that's in charge and the 1% that continues to become more and more wealthy. And they're going to keep on making B-21 raiders and keep enriching their pockets through the stock market while we sit here and drive through Baltimore and see homeless people and wonder, well, what's the government going to do about this? Well, what's Berney going to do? Berney's going to become part of the government in a position to where I can make a lot of noise. And I may win, I may lose, but they're going to know my name.
Yeah. And it's yeah, I always come back to the importance of at least bringing awareness because I'm an optimistic guy. I force myself to be optimistic. It's nothing that comes natural. I have to be. I have to always be looking to the horizon. I have to pray. I have to it's 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 something that I've been practicing for 32 years. Um,
And you're
but it's
good at it.
Thank you, sir. It it is you do get challenged when you ever like play a sport as a kid and like I never played basketball my entire life and I started when I was in sixth grade. All my friends have been playing in our short lives since like kindergarten. And I was the worst one on the team and all I did was practice year round all day after. That's all I did. And I became like one of the best kids in my like immediate group. And I felt so awesome about it and I was like, hell yeah. And then you go and try out for like the AAU team and you get your shit sent home in a package and you're like, it's discouraging. And sometimes through this podcast I feel like I'm flying high and I'm like, I'm interviewing these people, we're talking about this, that, the other thing. You're like, let's do it. And then you go and you see like the Pentagon's awarded like $800 billion and you're reading books about just how deep and how complex and how far the roots have spread. And you're like, oh, this is a mountain of a complex. But and that can be disillusioning. But I always come back to the at the very least, like, well, we should at least identify it. That's the very you can do something. You can at least identify it and talk about it. Maybe something as simple as someone doesn't know what the B-21 Raider is, or something as simple as like you and I aren't the first to bring this problem up, right? And it's not even a liberal hippie thing. I mean, I think most notably is Dwight Eisenhower, January 17th, 1961, 1960. I
Yeah,
mean,
something like that.
yeah, 5-star general, you know,
Beware the
yeah,
military industrial
yeah,
complex.
commander of the supreme commander of the Allied forces, president of the United States for 8 years. And yeah, it says on in the Oval Office as he's leaving, beware the military industrial. This isn't some bleeding heart Bernie Sanders. This is Dwight Eisenhower. I mean, you see the photos of him standing ramrod straight, talking to the soldiers the day before D-Day.
Yeah,
This guy ain't no
this was the
bitch.
dude.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
dude, this guy was the dude.
as real deal as you get. And then you can even wind back the clock 28 years prior to that. General Smedley Butler. War is
My
a
favorite.
racket. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
The original Dwight Eisenhower. Hey, I love Ike, but he plagiarized Smedley. Smedley was the real
Yeah.
deal. He was bringing it out first in 33.
I got the book right over here. I
War
think
is
we
a
talked
racket.
about it last time. Yeah.
It's a great book. And then there's Gangsters of Capitalism is about Smedley. It's not by him. And then The Plot to Seize the White House is also about him. Two very good books.
Yeah.
But the point is when you at least illuminate that, you can kind of bring awareness to it that it's not just you and I pontificating on a podcast on Rumble. Look, no, this has been brought up by the former heads of these groups. This isn't
Yes.
just standing on the side of the road with a piece of cardboard that says the military industrial complex is. No, these are the highest of the high guys coming out and going, this is I mean, General MacArthur came out post World War II and was like, there will always be a boogeyman. There will always be a new enemy in need of discipline from a growing military industrial complex. And then, as you pointed out earlier, and as I think we all go through, we go, well, maybe we should stop bombing these countries because these are forming the people that hate us. I mean, Ron Paul, the idea of blowback. You blow up
Yeah.
a wedding, if you don't kill them all, which you shouldn't be doing anyway, you're going to have some kid that grows up with nothing, with no AAU basketball, with no podcast, with no running water. The only thing he has
Is
is the
hate.
the white hot hatred of the memory of his family being disintegrated. And why wouldn't he? And so
Yep.
it is to him, that is what I'm going to do with my life is I'm going to get, and why wouldn't you? So at the very least, you can kind of just let people know that this is, you and I both know Smedley Butler. The
Yes.
vast majority of people I talk to on this podcast know Dwight Eisenhower, but they don't know Smedley. So the point of this whole rant is like there is value in at least making people aware that this isn't a new problem. It's been diagnosed multiple times over the last century and change. It is a problem, and it's not going to go away
No.
unless there's a groundswell of at least awareness.
Well, let me bring this back to you.
Sure.
$2 billion. I remember just recently with the latest election or the midterms, and our illustrious president, Mr. Biden, said or intimated that I'm going to take away, I'm going to give everyone, what, $20,000 worth of student loan debt relief. He knew that was unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
$2 billion could go a long way towards eliminating student debt for people your age. And people who are less astute as you fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Now, I happen to know that Mr. Biden, as president of the United States, has an army of lawyers who told him, advised him that that would have been unconstitutional in order to, remove that debt. And it created a stir, but he told that falsehood. People believed it. And oh, as soon as the election was over, well, that's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Oh, well, don't worry about it anymore. Bait and switch. You've been played for a sucker. But in the meantime, 21 that B-21 Raider is still going forward. And General Dynamics and
Raytheon,
McDonnell
Northrop
Douglas
Grumman,
and
Boeing.
Raytheon, all of them are, singing the praises of capitalism. But it doesn't work so well when everybody doesn't get a piece of the pie. And our manufacturing arm has been given away through globalization many, many years ago, generation ago, back during the Obama Clinton time, and now here we are. We got a service economy. I remember Obama saying something to the effect of, "Well, we're going to do this Asian pivot and let them do our manufacturing for us, and all of us are going to be, computer technicians. We're not going to be manufacturing anymore." And I look around, I drive down I-95, and I see hardly any American cars anymore. Now, I got two American cars in my driveway, and I'm not saying they're the greatest things in the world, but what I am saying is we're not making anything that really counts. Some of us are prospering. Some of us are in the defense industry and doing well, but there's a lot of people in Baltimore, a lot of people in the inner city, a lot of people in the Rust Belt that are not doing well. I mean, just recently, during my campaign time, I'm out in Western Maryland. And the further, once you go past Westminster, you're really in the Midwest. That's the attitude. That's the way things are. That's how people think. The urban things that trouble Baltimore and PG County are not an issue out there. They're looking at fentanyl. They're looking at lack of jobs. They're looking at manufacturing and kids growing up in small town America that don't have something to look forward to. They have to move to the city or maybe build a podcast in order to make a living. So I just have an issue with people being left behind. There's too much money, too much wealth in this country for there to be so many people that have so much to spare. And we're not making anything better. And I look around at some of the plans that I'm seeing with the World Economic Forum. I just finished reading that Fourth Industrial Revolution. I know
Mhm.
you have. That bothers me. And when I was talking to my young nieces, one of my young nieces, particularly, who's interested in politics last night, she never even heard of the World Economic Forum. And this woman's a college graduate, very bright woman. But we have to wake up and understand who our enemy is. And these people don't have good plans for us. And I see it coming. And hey, I've got two retirement checks coming from the United States government. I've got nothing but free time and energy on my hand to agitate the system. And that's what I'm going to do.
And that is kind of like a bigger level concern is you go, well, what is the fourth industrial revolution? We are, there are certain themes and cycles that just repeat throughout history. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Like I get that the rise of empires, the coalescence of wealth, the kind of rampant debauchery and depraved indulgences that tend to go on towards the end of an empire, and then a new one rises. America's, I do believe, somewhat different in that instead of just growing wealthy and tired, we kind of have I think, a genius system of letting new poor people in here who then grow and try to get richer. But we are approaching something that hasn't happened before in human history. Sure, you could argue that weren't B-21 Raiders 1,000 years ago. Yeah, but in general, growing agriculture, whatever the weapon of the day is, be it a bronze shield or be it a catapult or be it a P-51 Mustang or be it a B-21 Raider or whatever it is in 100 years, some orbital directed energy weapon, those are all constant themes, and your wealth can either be that you're a king in the tallest spire of a castle or that you've got a penthouse in 9 cities, whatever it is. Those all repeat in unique ways, unique in their manifestation, but repetitive ways in their themes. Wealth aggregation, reaching a height of folly and arrogance and cockiness, and then a new invasion, war, famine, whatever. There is something happening now that hasn't happened before. And it is the advancement of automation, not not textile mills, not a water powered loom. in Connecticut 300 years ago. No, the actual automation of everything that a human can do. And not just, I used to think, well, there will always at least be the creative side of humanity. Man, you see now, the most brilliant art you've ever seen is AI, and it generates it in half a second.
Yeah.
When you look at it, you go, oh, we're getting obsolete. And so
Yes.
when you look around and go, they can't let all these people. It'd be one thing if China was rising and becoming a new America. You'd be like, oh, well, this empire is falling and that one's rising. But just as many people there are screwed as there are here. So you go, what's going on? Right? When you make the bed and one corner pops up and you go and make that corner and the other corner pops up, that's kind of the rise and fall of empires throughout human history. The wealth, the innovation, the brain power, it moves. We're not seeing that movement now, yet it's still evaporating. And where is it evaporating to? Upwards. Why?
Yes.
Because I don't think we're needed. You used to, at least you didn't want to kill all the serfs because somebody still had to plow the fields. Somebody still had to, you know, go get the firewood. I don't I don't know that they need us anymore. And that is, man, that makes the
Troublesome.
military industrial complex problem. That makes you yearn for that one. Go, I miss the good old days of presidents saying, watch out for this and its unwarranted influence. This is World Economic Forum, Fourth Industrial Revolution, Great Reset, Agenda 201, Agenda 2030, whatever you want to call it. Man, this is yeah, I don't even know how to start this one.
Well, let me go along that track a little bit.
Sure.
Years ago, I'm a big fan of TED Talks,
Yeah.
and I heard literally 20 years ago Bill Gates advocating for population reduction.
Yeah.
So Mr. Gates happens to be the owner of the largest. He's the largest owner of farmland in the entire United States,
Mm-hmm.
arable farmland. Okay, so that means he has the ability to control our food distribution, our food production, and we've allowed him to do this. And why is Bill Gates, who has no degree that I know of, he's in charge of, he owns all this farmland, he sells us computer and software, and he sells us vaccines.
Oh.
Is this man omnipotent? No man is omnipotent, but we've allowed this person to become so almost uber powerful. And that tells me that, okay, 20 years ago, you're advocating for a reduced population. He's already been kicked out of several countries, but he's selling us vaccines. Are we that stupid? So again, I see this trend towards reducing the population. I see the people who are in charge who don't seem to have any care about the greater population. And then the World Economic Forum is over here talking about, digital bank, central bank digital currencies.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you implement this and the government has control of everything that you do. There's no more bartering, there's no more trading, there's no more cash. It's okay. I want to go and buy some bread, but Bernie's this right wing nationalist who believes that we should be using cash. Well, let's just go shut down his bank account and let's see how right wing he really is. Let's see if he believes in what he really says.
Mm.
So that those things unnerve me. And what bothers me more is that more people aren't seeing this. They're
Yeah.
not they're not getting the idea that the AI, the government, the World Economic Forum, the 1% seems to be closing in on us. Things are
Mm.
not the same.
Yeah. It's yeah, and it's something that if you bring up, I mean, it takes you gotta really you got to ease people into the idea of a military industrial complex. It's very helpful that we can point back to a former president and be like, here's the
Yes.
thing, right? And it's that gives it a little more sticking power. But once you start talking about this, which is all factual, I mean, I read Ray Kurzweil's "The Singularity Is Near." I read that in 2007.
Wow.
I was a weird guy in
So
high school.
yeah, I'm
Uh,
still weird.
yeah, I was I remember talking to people. I'm like, oh, it's coming, the biogenomics, the biotechnology, the nanobots. We're gonna upload our minds into it, and everybody's like, the hell's wrong with you? But
Exactly.
I remember reading that in 2007 and kind of having the realization of like, oh, they are. It's a new form of elite in that it's not hopping from country to country. It is it is leaving behind mankind as a whole. And these ideas
Agreed.
are these ideas are so, I mean, they're so unnerving and they're so huge that it's hard to even bring up to. I mean, think about what we just said, and everything you just said is factual. It's 100% factual, and you can cite it. But I mean, just face value. You mean, let's say you're trying to talk to someone that doesn't even know about Smedley Butler. And it's like, by the way, there's this group of hyper elite who control all of the world's militaries and economics who want to be able to shut down any commerce they don't like, which is the flow. If the world is a cell, they're shutting down the flow of energy in ATP to anything they don't like, and they can double and triple and quadruple down to things they do like. They can monitor everything using an NSA surveillance state, which was built to fight terror. What a surprise! Using your own defense as a reasoning to build up the weapon which will ultimately control you, and that they're realizing for the first, not realizing, but have been predicting and are working to bring about for the first time in human history. You don't need, I mean, what are we really? We're what we really are first generation robots. We're bipedal. We stand on our hind legs. We have hands with 10 digits, opposable thumbs. We have sight sensors, we have sound sensors, and we can keep our own balance. We run on carbohydrates, fats, and proteins and water, and we produce waste, which can be used for fertilizer. We are machines, and they're producing machines now that are made of metal that can do it faster. They don't require rights. They don't take days off. They don't even take evenings off. They
Nope.
run on electricity. They got rid of all the other stuff like hormones and love and imagination, and they don't think. They just take orders more more astutely and readily than even the best Nazi. Yeah, they're starting to look at us and go, I don't know, to quote Henry Kissinger, they're starting to look like a bunch of useless eaters.
Actually, the first time I heard that phrase was from Hillary Clinton, who is an acolyte of Henry Kissinger,
Uh-huh.
worthless eaters. And, that kind of, I heard that first in the 90s and it kind of hit me to what they were thinking. And it just kept it in the back of my mind as I carried a gun for Uncle Sam. And all these things have just kind of resonated with me and just welled up within the last 10 years. And I'm like, I'm on the wrong side of this. I'm
Yeah.
on the wrong side of this. And people have dignity, people have worth. And but it seems like some people are just willing to give their dignity and worth for comfort. They're just ready to give it away. And I'm not ready to do that. And I can see that a lot of the people that are in charge have an agenda and it is not good for us. I mean, for example, I'm a big fan of Elon Musk and I like what he did with Twitter and I think it's wonderful. However, he's also talking about Neuralink,
Mm-hmm.
which is a technology that could be used to subdue humanity.
Yeah.
That's the deal.
Yeah.
And that scares me. What are you going to do when you start making, implants? I mean, we're walking around, every one of us has a cell phone. We're already we're already digital animals.
Mm-hmm.
And they are monitoring, when I say they, the 1%, the military industrial complex, the medical industrial complex, they're able to monitor everything that we do right now. Years ago, and I'm ranting, so
No,
stop
go.
me
Keep
whenever
going.
you
No.
feel like it.
Yeah, it's all I do. Keep going.
Well, me and my buddies back when I was in the military back in the day, you know, I remember getting lost in a sandstorm out between Kuwait and Iraq on the border, and I had two convoys, or a convoy with like five trucks, and we're up front, and we didn't have any GPS. We had a map, And me and my deputy were in the lead truck, and we just pulled out the map, and we didn't even slow down. It's like the sandstorm came, we couldn't see the road anymore, but we knew if we just kept going north and we had our compasses, we were good to go.
Yeah.
And I drove all over Europe before I had a cell phone. I drove all over Korea and all over Asia and yada yada yada. But the issue is now, um, most people can't get anywhere without a GPS, and we're dumbing ourselves down, and we're making ourselves computer dependent. And so now it's like, well, can you calculate the tip for your meal? And most people can't even do that anymore. So I intentionally worked that out in my own head intentionally. And, I'm just that old school kind of guy, but we got to understand that these people want us dependent on these devices,
The
because we're
machine.
making ourselves dumber and dumber and dumber. And I sound like the get off my lawn old guy, and I probably am now, and that's okay. But TikTok is making us dumb. It's owned by the Chinese government. I can tell you, they're gathering information on each one of us, and it's not good. It's not good at all, and people need to wake up.
I have always justified not being able to calculate the tip by just tipping. I just say I tip good, and that's always
Yeah,
been my rationale. As I go, I just whatever I have in the wallet, I'll give them one of those. That's always
there you
been my
go.
rationalization. But so, in all these ways, we are becoming dependent, right? I mean, you could argue that at 32, uh, what immediate skills do I have in this world compared to historical 32-year-olds? I would argue not a whole lot. I know how to turn the lights on. I know how to turn the computer on. I know how to send an email, send a Zoom invite. I know how to find interesting guests and ask them to come on the show. So on one hand, we are undeniably becoming dumber and less skilled. However, it used to be that I mean, I think they said that and I remember watching or reading this statistic in 2006, and it was a single week's worth of New York Times articles in the year 2006 was more information than an entire household would come across in 1806. So becoming less skilled, I don't know how to work a loom or build a Model T, but if I can use my thumb and go on this phone, I can now go Smedley Butler. I can
Yeah,
now go Fourth Industrial Revolution, World Economic Forum, B-21 Raider, whatever. So although I don't know how to sharpen a spear, I don't know how to track down a deer, but in some ways I am doing more than 100 of me could have done 100 years ago. The number of people I reach, if I have 12,000 subscribers that I can reach on any given day, I don't have to wait for them all to be assembled in the town square. It's not a once a year pilgrimage where we go to the big city and see the lights. In many ways, I'm doing more than I could have ever done in multitudes. So,
but you, sir, are an anomaly.
well, but you don't need 100% of people to do how many. Not everyone is going to take advantage of every opportunity, right? There are a lot of people who, I look at my dad. My dad grew up dirt poor in an industrial town and climbed through the ranks of the poultry industry in the 90s and 2000s.
That's a rough business.
It is a very rough business. He is a rough Irish man. But there were also a lot of people with the same brain power as him, with the same opportunities or lack thereof, from the same kind of destitute town who didn't do that. So I think you have to accept that not everyone's going to do it. And that's a given. So what I'm getting at is no, I can't, I can get to the local grocery store and the gas station. I just moved to Portland, Maine. I don't know anything about this. In my own city, I don't know how to drive around. I have no idea how to drive around.
Wow.
I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. So no, I need a GPS. But we're also we're also reaching these levels of capabilities that we couldn't do before. No, I can't track a deer. No, I can't build an engine. But what I can do is like that, I can reach 12,000 people in like 35 countries who listen to the podcast who now know about Smedley Butler. So my point is this is, and this is the optimist in me, I can't completely look at technology and our dependence on it as it's a double-edged sword. It is very bad. They want to monitor everything. They want to control central bank digital currency, CBDCs. They want to do all that. But we can also do more than we've ever done before. We can talk, and I can get people in this moment on the other side of the country to start reading about a book or something that I could never do before. So I don't think it's all bad. And then furthermore, to kind of back up another level, I don't think that any of this is avoidable. You it just
Yeah,
it just is.
I get what
So
you're saying.
so although there are all these critiques of the internet and of phones, it's not going away. It's here. And
No,
if we don't use it, our concern won't be the fourth industrial revolution. It'll just be the neighboring country that does use it to advance us. So it's like I've never surfed in my life, but it's a lot like a wave. We have to surf this. And the dangers are the government can monitor it all and they can shut it down in an instant. But we don't have a choice. We're not going back to Amish country. We have to learn how to surf the wave that we're on. And that's a daunting challenge, but we have
it
to move
is.
forward with this environment isn't changing. So we have to learn how to fight in this environment
Well,
and rant.
the thing with me, and you probably had a lot more, or better yet, more recent educational courses than I have. Although I've spent my entire life, in the government and in the military, constantly learning, you're the kind of guy that reads books on your own, and I
Mhm.
am too. But the issue is what I don't see as a technologist is any emphasis on ethics,
Yeah.
business ethics. We've got people that are technologists like Bill Gates. What has he learned about just simply being good to your fellow man,
Yeah.
or examining someone else's idea and juxtaposing that idea with your own and trying to understand whether this is good for society or not? For me, from what I see, he's got his idea on what he wants to do and he's not listening to anyone else. And that is why you find someone with such a monopoly. And these people have these ideas about climate change. And, the climate's going to change regardless. And you got these ice core samples that show that we've had more carbon in the environment, less carbon in the environment. I follow that stuff with like Randall Carlson and
Mhm.
people like that. And you exactly know who he is, but a lot of people don't, because a lot of people aren't curious. And when you go through the curriculums and schools, they're teaching all this social stuff, and I don't see anybody teaching any ethics. See less and less history. I see more and more control, and we're not teaching our kids to be free thinkers. And if we don't do that, AI will take over.
Yeah.
That's the advantage that we have, is our creativity and our free thinking nature, and that's been the driver of our economy for a long time. And that's why this place is still the place where people want to come to. However, we've got to figure out some way to get people to be more ethical, I think.
I think the way to do that, and it's, kind of your cheesy Hallmark line, but it's to lead by example. You know,
There you
ethics,
go.
ethics and morals are fascinating. That much like love, it's not always the profitable path. It's not over. Well, thermodynamics. It's not over the most energetically efficient path. It's when you look out for a sibling or a cousin or something, you're not making money on that. It's taking time out of
No,
your. But why do you do it? Well, there's something deeper, and it's the override button. That is love. That is ethics. That is morals. That is if I personally,
humanity.
yes, your humanity. I believe in a God. Maybe you don't. You can still be a moral person, but there is an override button, right? Where you go, this isn't. You don't have to tip anyone, but there is something about going, hey man, this guy's delivering my McDonald's at 2 a.m. on Friday.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd be doing this if he didn't have to be doing it. Throw him $5, whatever. There is an override button. And so, yes, on just someone like Bill Gates alone. It seems like they just run free with the power, and you're always going to have that. But then there's also, if I wanted this, if I wanted this podcast to purely just be an enterprise about views and clicks, one, I wouldn't be talking about Smedley Butler. I'd be talking about the Kardashians. But two, I wouldn't have willingly and knowingly got kicked off YouTube, and I'm not allowed on iTunes, and I'm banned from Twitter, and I'm banned from Reddit. But I also know that there are values like freedom of speech. And I also know what's coming if we bend the knee. In the short term, it will be better. I'll stop getting censored and I can maybe make a buck on this. But in the long term, these very warnings that have been given out will come faster. And the ultimate, fourth industrial revolution, technocratic dictatorship that's coming is far outweighs any good I get from shutting up. So you can still, and there's a double-edged sword, or there's two birds with one stone to that. Is one, you have your override button where you can go, it's not right to censor speech, I'm going to get banned and it's going to hurt my channel, but I'm going to do it because it's the right thing. And then there's also, well, how do you teach ethics? Well, you practice what you preach. I can sit here and talk about the right thing, but if I'm not doing anything, no one's going to be inspired to do anything. Versus if you lead by example, someone's going to look at it and go, oh. I mean, even right now, I would say Elon, for all of his flaws, he's leading by example. He did.
Agreed.
He could very well have bought Twitter and just let it keep running.
Yep.
He wouldn't be, not just Twitter. I mean, his actions on Twitter have made people attack him from every industry. All of his government contracts are in jeopardy now.
Yeah.
Why did he do that? Why did he do that? And he stated that, as important as getting off of fossil fuels and leaving becoming a multiplanetary species, I think he looked at it and he said, I think his exact quote was something along the lines of like, free speech and open discourse is pivotal to human civilization. Without it, we're never going to get off the planet because there will be a dictatorship, there will be tyranny, and there will be no future. We'll re-enter the dark ages. So I am still hopeful because of that. It's one thing for me to get banned from YouTube. When the world's richest guy is doing it because, and I know a lot of people hate Elon Musk. I don't care. I think he's awesome. Man, he could make a lot more money just shutting up and making weapons. He doesn't have to make self-landing rockets. He didn't have to buy Twitter and, release Twitter files and show the encroaching tyranny in the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI and the Biden administration using Twitter to shut down free speech. That's someone doing the right thing. The colonists could have just shut up, paid the tea tax, and gone about their life. But they
That's not
didn't.
his way. That's
But
not their
why?
way.
So then you have to ask, well, why do they do it? Because there is something else that can't be shown on a spreadsheet, and it's ethics. It's your humanity. To quote the great Berney
Agreed.
Flowers from 2 minutes ago, it's your humanity that you can do the right thing. And so, be it using a printing press or be it using big tech and 5G interconnectivity, I think if enough people still do the right thing, it can still be beautiful. It can still be great. That doesn't mean it's not going to be hellish between point A and point B. But if the game was already over, it'd be over. You and I wouldn't be allowed to talk freely
Agreed.
on a
The game
podcast if they'd
the
already
game's
won.
not over. The
It's
game's
not.
not over. There's people like you, people like me, people like Elon Musk. I mean, who believe in freedom. There's a lot more of us. I mean,
Yes.
when I was a kid, there was such a thing called a moral majority. And I know there's some connotations that go along with that. But the issue of the day is there are people that are free thinkers and believe in human potential. And that's kind of where I am. I mean, I look around at these oligarchs and they need to be reined in, and they're only going to be reined in as if the average person checks them on their BS. And so maybe that's what I'm trying to do. Maybe that's what you're trying to do. There's a lot of people that are trying to do the right thing. And I admire Elon Musk. I like what he's doing. The Neuralink thing kind of scares me,
Creeps
but
me out.
yeah, but here's the thing. You can take a hammer and you can build a house, or you can kill a person with it. It's our choice. So we've got to make a choice, an active choice to do what is right, and we got to teach our children to do such a thing. And our parents had to make that choice, and their parents before them. And things eventually get better. And I too am an optimist, but I've just chosen to take a stand where I am, and I'm going to just try to make things better by trying to fix the surrounding area around me. And I've got some experiences in the military industrial complex that is particularly unique, and I'm going to do my best to hold them accountable.
Absolutely. Hey, Bernie, I got to use the restroom real quick. Can you tell everybody where to find your book?
Well, that's wonderful. You can find my book on Amazon.com. Just type in Bernie Flowers and it'll pop right up. And I'm very excited. I'm a first time author, and I saw the book physically for the first time just yesterday when I went to a conference with my publisher, and he surprised me. And, he's done a wonderful thing. His name is Ken Rashawn. If you're familiar with Perfect Publishing, they've purchased, or better yet, published hundreds of books. And they're just great people. They treated me very, very well. And I look forward to a long relationship with those guys. But the bottom line with me is here I am, a retired military officer with a specific background in the federal government. Most of my life has been behind the fence, so to speak. And I've learned a few things that I think can be useful to humanity and to specifically to the United States. So I ran for Congress a while back ago, did not win, but this is my first time out. And next time, perhaps I'll run again, perhaps I won't. But I'm still in there fighting for, America, specifically the inner city, and I have a real issue with our government spending goo gobs of money on B-21 raiders and monstrous programs designed to kill people when folks are dying in right around us in the inner city. So that's kind of where I am, and I'm just pleased to be here. And again, 34 years behind the fence, I think I got something that I can bring to the table. Feeling better now?
Yes, sir. Um,
Amen.
so another thing to talk about something like Neuralink, I think that's a perfect example of what I was saying earlier about you have to ride the wave. Um, I always use this analogy, and I use this not analogy, I guess example, because it is you can't really supersede it. And it's when the scientists from the Manhattan Project came to Truman a couple of years after World War II ended, and they talked to him about the hydrogen bomb, which they knew was theoretically possible, but now they're like, oh, we can actually do this 1,000 times stronger than the atomic bomb, which was already the power of God, 1,000 times stronger. And I always tell people, go look up hydrogen bomb versus atomic bomb. At first, they might kind of look the same until you realize atomic bomb tests are, for the most part, always done somewhere in the desert and you can see the mountains in the background. Go look at a hydrogen bomb, you'll realize it's always done in the ocean, and there aren't mountains, those are clouds. That's how much bigger they are. And they called it an evil thing. And I think the meeting only lasted 7 minutes. It's in Garrett Graff's book, Raven Rock. But Truman eventually goes, can the Russians do it? And they said in a couple years. And they said, well, we have to do it. And I always look at that as you can't stick your head in the sand and go, oh, the hydrogen bomb's gross. We're not doing it. This is bad. You have to do it. The Nazis were trying to build an atomic bomb. The Japanese were even farther behind than the Germans, but they were trying to build an atomic bomb. It wasn't just that we wanted to use it to end the war. We did, but there was also like, hey, regardless of a war, this thing's going on. That's why Leo Szilard and Einstein left Germany. And they went to FDR and they wrote a letter about a uranium bomb of terrific explosive force. So the point is they looked at it and said, we have to do it. The same thing with Operation Paperclip. If we don't take these Nazis, the Soviets
The
will.
others,
And then
yeah,
instead of having rockets and uh, building our own safeguard systems about, not having accidental launches and having to follow a chain of command and encrypted nuclear codes, instead of that, we're going to be in a position where we go, boy, I sure hope the Soviets just don't attack us. And that is what technology has shown again and again and again. Because we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a world of multiple nations. If a new godlike, omniscient power starts to arise, the atomic bomb, powered flight, whatever, the computer, you can't go, ugh, gross. I'm not touching that. Because if you don't touch it, it's you and a
Someone else
caveman.
will.
And you and a caveman, and you discover at a sharp rock, and you go, oh, that looks bad. Well, now the other caveman's like, hey man, if you're not picking that up, I am, and you're going
Yeah.
down, and I'm taking your wife and kids. That is the world we live in. Now, is that a good world? Hey, that's human nature, and that's far beyond the scope of this podcast. So to Neuralink, and this might be my own admiration for Elon Musk. I think he's an awesome role model. So, but I also could just be, I could be blinded by my own pro Elon bias. So that's a possibility. I think he's looking at this and going, it's coming, are merging with technology. I can't just go, it's gross. Because what happens when China spearheads it? What happens when corrupt elements of the CIA? What happens when big tech, who are already seeing, will happily censor everything on your phone? What happens when you give them a chip into your brain? That's where I think he's coming from is we can't just not look at it and say that's icky, that's scary. It's here. What are you going to do with it? That's kind of my 2 cents on Neuralink. Not that you asked, but you did just bring it up. So,
Well, the thing is that he's our best bet. Bottom line,
yeah,
as I look at these oligarchs out here, okay, Bill Gates, thumbs down. What's the other guy? What's his name? Jeff
Bezos.
Bezos, thumbs down. I'll take Elon Musk every day and twice on Sunday
Yeah,
before I deal with these characters. And we know that Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, has the data contract for our friends over at Fort Meade,
yeah, the
has
cloud
the data
contract
contract for U.S. Transportation Command
and the CIA's cloud.
and the CIA. So the thing is, everything our government, everything our military does, he's got access to it before we do. And he says, well, I'm retired. I don't do that. Do we really trust a man that's
Oh,
that rich?
oh, shut up, Bezos.
Really? So I say, I look at Musk and I don't see anything that he has done that's been particularly unethical. And we got to get behind him and trust him. I got a lot of Tesla shares and I'm taking a beating on them right now, but that's okay. I'm holding. But I just think the guy's great. And I worry about that Neuralink in the hands of people who are unethical, but we have no choice because we have to keep moving forward. And we've survived worse. I mean,
Yeah.
as you said, we survived the atomic bomb. I mean, we didn't get bombed, but the technology exists. The Soviets have it. 7 or 8 other countries have it now. And somehow, some way, we haven't destroyed the earth.
Yes. And let's play devil's advocate. Elon Musk does have a ton of contracts with the DoD and the Space Force and the NRO. But again, all we have is you have to judge the actions. And I see a guy who has openly talked about on Rogan his immense fear of what happens when AI comes along and it usurps us. He had gone to the White House, he had gone to the UN, and no one was doing anything about it. He could probably make a lot more money if he just tried to fight for like the new Sentinel ICBM contract. But he's making self-landing rockets to lower the price of a kilogram to orbit, and he's hell-bent on getting us to Mars. Like, listen, if he's duping us, then he's duping us, and it's all done anyway. You have to take the best
Calculated
possible.
risks.
Yeah, we don't really have any other option. So we can sit here and go, well, I don't like what Elon. Okay, well then what else are we getting behind? We are going up against a World Economic Forum, at CIA,
Right.
at China, or whatever. Hey man, strange bedfellows. You got to get on the team that's the best one for you. And
Agreed. 100%.
I do think that's where he's looking at it is you got to get ahead of it and you got to get on board and you got to move forward. There is no other option. And if he's duping us and he's controlled opposition, well, then the game's over anyway. And
Yeah.
but I don't who knows, but it's really just based on my gut. I don't I I I do think that he is pro-human, and like you said, we survived. I mean, we've survived the Cold War right
Yes, we
now,
did.
every day, yesterday, tomorrow. Spoiler alert.
Years ago, when well before you were born, they used to say that Ronald Wilson Reagan, he is the Antichrist 666.
Yeah,
And this was flowing around on the streets and where he's going to blow up the world. Reagan's been long since dead, and 30, 40 years have passed, and we're still here.
yeah.
So we're not as bad off as we think we are. We just got to be aware. I mean, you talk about nuclear weapons, and I know you've read the books. There have been lots of near accidents.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, they've been literally physically falling out of airplanes for years.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with something that sensitive, accidents are going to happen. Nothing made by man is foolproof. And we still didn't blow up North Carolina. We
Yeah,
didn't blow up South
Greensboro.
Carolina. You know what I'm talking about. And so the issue of the day is we just got to keep moving forward and trying to do the right thing and holding everybody accountable. And Elon Musk has put himself out there. I mean, he could be like, let's say Warren Buffett, and they're like, hey, I'm making my money, I'm doing my thing, I'm investing in whatever the heck I want to. And as long as I get profit, no matter what this evil thing it is I invested in it, at least I made money for my investors. I see Elon Musk as an equitable, as a person with some ethics who is actually lucky enough to become the richest man in the world. So yeah, now, mind you, you look at the electric cars. I mean, I was that close to buying a Tesla. That was going to be my retirement present. And then I started doing research on this, the lithium batteries and where they come from, and then
Lithium
how,
miners.
yeah, and most of them are in war. The mines are in war torn areas, and then there's the idea of the residue from the batteries when they're done. Where are you going to store all this stuff?
The
And
ocean.
also the power. Yeah, exactly. Sure. And the power grid here in the United States is really not ready for everyone to have an electric car. And
Yeah.
nobody's talking about that. But the World Economic Forum is push, 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 buy these 60, 70, $80,000 electric cars. And then when we're tired of you, we'll just shut them all down so you can't
Kill
try it.
switch. And again,
There you
it's
have it.
there's that double-edged sword, but you have to keep moving forward.
Got
I
to
mean, you
keep
have
moving
to,
forward.
I mean, yeah, the Greensboro, North Carolina, Command and Control by Eric M. Schlosser is a great book about a specific silo. I forget where it is. I think it's Arkansas. It was like the deadliest leak, the fuel leaked, and it killed a bunch of the operators. It's a great book because he's telling that story over, 15 hours of audiobook, he's constantly jumping into other segues about all these other, I think they're called broken arrow accidents. So from like Italy to Spain to North Carolina to Canada to Greenland. Yeah, we've like dropped the physical weapons, we've lost the physical weapons, we've spilled the fissile material, we've almost launched them. I mean, I think sometime during the Cold War, a bear chewed on like a fence outside of like a Minot or Mino missile silo,
Why
and
not?
they thought it was like the Spetsnaz, and they almost launched. Somebody put in
Yeah.
a war game cassette in Cheyenne Mountain, and I guess it's supposed the value of the missiles being launched on the computer was supposed to be 000, but someone had accidentally entered a two, so they got a warning that two missiles were coming, and then 22, and then 222, and then 2,222. I think Zbigniew Brzezinski was woken up by whoever was alerting him about DEF CON and said 2,222 Soviet missiles are inbound, and he wasn't going to have time to make it to a nuclear bunker, so his designated successor was already at Mount Weather. And I don't even remember what book this is from. They all blend together. But he was laying in bed with his wife and decided not to wake her because he was like, "Why would I scare her? Like, I'm in DC. I'm about to get hit by 100 megatons of Soviet fury, but we're here, and those are all
Yeah. Yeah.
terrifying." And you might
And you
say,
are very well read, by the way.
I have an OCD interest in stuff, and then I read every book on it, and then it doesn't go away. But you might look at this and go, okay, well, it's only a matter of time, sure, And then you might say, well, then why even have these? And then you get back to, well, if you don't, someone else will, all the way back to the first caveman finding a rock.
Yes.
That's human nature, and we can't deny that. And it's just, these are the rules of the game. These are the rules of, well, why do we have these instincts? Well, genetics and survival of the fittest. I mean, you're getting into like the fabric of reality. So we have survived all of these, right? We've survived have today, tomorrow, and right now, this very moment, there are thousands of nuclear weapons in silos, on stealth bombers, in submarines, Chinese, French, American, Indian, Pakistani,
Russian.
Russian. They're all pointed. They're all
Yeah.
pointed, and they have designated war games and tripwires, and it's not just robots. It's fallible humans in missile silos with keys.
Yes.
However, for something that is unavoidable, we have done, and I don't think it's arguable. I think it's objective by the very fact that you and I are alive today, that society still exists. We've handled this with flying colors. You
Oh,
can't.
we have. We're still here.
I think this is probably one of the great bottlenecks. If you could somehow have a god's eye view of all of the universe, this is probably one of the great bottlenecks of intelligent species. Nuclear weapons.
Hmm.
We passed. And now we passed the Cuban Missile Crisis. We passed 1983 Able Archer. We passed 9/11. Uh, we didn't declare all out war when it seems like COVID was engineered. Like, for all of our problems, hey man, we're still here. You know, you get C's, get degrees. You pass OChem, you pass OChem. So
It's funny you just said something. Being an unvaccinated person, um, you ever looked up the term "died suddenly"?
I interviewed the directors last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah.
And when you had, and I don't want to change the subject,
No, I don't care.
but
Change
it's,
it.
well, the thing is that when you had Dr. Malone on,
Mm-hmm.
it just blew me away. And I've been following you and him and some of the other folks. And now it seems, why are people not talking about all these anomalies in the medical industry with the myocarditis and the
Pericarditis.
remdesivir and
Yeah.
all that sort of thing? Are we that sheepish?
I would argue that we are talking about it. They are
Some people
affected.
are talking about it.
I think a lot more people are talking about it than we even know. Not just because of censorship, but part of the effect and value of censorship is you want people to feel alone. You don't want to listen. If I stand out on my balcony and everyone in Portland is just for whatever reason all outside, and I go, how many of y'all think that the vaccines are causing myocarditis? And like, you know, even if 50% raise their hands, I still know I'm not alone. And I'm like, good. And that gives you're like, okay, I know I'm not crazy. But when you're just alone on your couch and you're scrolling through Facebook or Reddit and you don't see any articles on it, no one's talking about it, you must go, yeah, it's probably not a thing then. But what you don't realize is that there's 100,000 other people, 100 million, who are all scrolling and they're going, oh, no one's talking about it. Like, whatever. I guess it's not a thing. There are some people like me who are going, hey, this is a thing. It's happening. And those people are effectively shadow banned, blocked, IP banned, removed.
Imagine.
So when I say, or when you say that not a lot of people are talking about it, I would argue that a lot of people are talking about it, but that is part of the power of censorship, is not just to stop the information from getting to people. They want you to feel alone. But the thing with that is, like you said earlier, if you're going to do a missile strike on a crowd of people, you better kill them all, because if you don't, there's going to be one or two people who are hell bent on revenge.
There you have it.
With top down censorship, you have to control 100%. But there's a Rumble, there's a BitChute, there's an Odyssey, there's a Spotify, there's a Clout Hub, a Brighteon. You got Elon buying Twitter. Well, now you have the people that survived. And so what you do is you go, all right, well, let's see. I've done 1,031 episodes. What are the most viewed top 10? Oh, it's all about COVID, pericarditis, myocarditis. What about the top 20? COVID, pericarditis, myocarditis, inflation, and election fraud. What about the top 25? Then you pull in vaccine passports, border crossings, and you go, wait a second, hold on. So the few channels that do break away, and you do have an accurate sample size, my top 15 episodes are responsible for over 99% of all views on this channel.
Wow.
Out of 1,031 episodes, this is
Mm-hmm.
episode 1,032. And I've got a total of 3.292 million views.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. About 3.1 million are specifically about vaccine side effects, myocarditis, pericarditis, election integrity, 2020 election fraud, and border crossings, vaccine mandates, and aid to Ukraine.
And those things keep me up at night.
Well, those are the things that you then have to extrapolate. And you go,
There you have it.
is this just a coincidence that the people that use Rumble all happen to be in the same? Or if I grabbed any random 3 million people from anywhere on the censored ocean of big tech, I'd go out on a limb and say I'd probably get 99% of views in the top 10 episodes. So unless you have 100% top down effective control of everything, much like a vaccine, if you don't kill it all, you get a variant. You can use
There you
bleach,
go.
but if you get 1% that survives, they regenerate and they
Yep.
become lethal. So, what are the top trending things on Twitter? It's the Twitter files. It is the government using the Twitter to censor. What are they censoring? US aid to Ukraine, inflation numbers, border crossing numbers, vaccine deaths, insurance claims. So at first glance, sure, it can seem that no one's talking about it. But if you just look a little bit under the covers, just pull up take a peek inside of the tent, the overwhelming majority of people are aware of it. And
I want more people to be aware of it
sure,
because there are people in our government have basically sold us out. And now they're trying to get away with it. Fauci's over here retired and thinks that, we're just going to forget about this. And no, I'm far too much of a vengeful spirit to let that happen. And I'm not the only one because I know you think the same way.
and then it's also back to the military industrial complex thing. And by the way, don't let me keep you forever. I've got it's 3:25 now. I've got another podcast at 4, so
Dude,
I
we
can
shut
still
down when you say shut down.
okay. All right. I just sometimes I realize I'm keeping people verbally hostage. But like the military industrial complex, it helps to not be a crazy person with mismatched socks screaming on a sidewalk. It helps when you go show, a video of Dwight Eisenhower from the Oval Office, right? All of these things are the best way you can approach it is through credibility. And that's why if we're going to talk about the Air Force, I'm going to have you on. If we're
Well,
going to
thank you.
talk about mRNA vaccines, I'm going to have on Dr. Malone. And that's what adds to the credibility of it. And, the truth doesn't mind being investigated. The truth
Yeah.
doesn't mind being, because it just is.
The
Just
truth is a
is.
lion. It will defend itself.
Just let it out of the cage. Yeah.
There you go.
Was that Saint, not Saint Francis? It was that Saint Francis? I don't remember.
I
Um,
don't remember, but I know the quote.
but it's also, yeah. You're not worried about passing a lie detector test if I'm asking you, is your name Berney Flowers? Now, if you're a CIA operative sent to kill me, you might be a little, I'm not actually Berney. But you ask me if I'm Tommy, I'm Tommy Carrigan. It's what it is. Just, the truth doesn't mind it. You can pick
You
it
don't have
apart.
to remember the truth because it comes out. It's the
It just
lie
is.
that you have to
Yes.
remember.
Well, and that's the thing is the lie it is so delicate. The lie has to be so meticulously constructed and maintained that
Hmm.
it is on our side that it cannot last. It will break. You can keep a conspiracy going for a long time. You can keep a lie under wraps for a long time. Don't doubt these people's work ethic. They're evil, but they're motivated to keep something quiet. They do it well.
There you go.
It will eventually come out. And that's
Yes.
again this podcast on Rumble or Elon buying Twitter or Joe Rogan, who
Who's another big favorite of mine,
has all the
along with
money.
you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Has all the money in the world, has absolutely no reason to put himself in the crosshairs of the woke left, but still did it because he was
Hmm.
like the government's colluding with Pfizer. Still did it. None of these would be allowed to happen if there had been a successful coup and it was over.
Mhm.
It just wouldn't. You'd shut it down.
Yeah.
The fact that the game is still going shows that it's not over yet. And keep pushing. And it's also just on like a less noble and less philosophical level. There's also just like a fuck these people. Like, you know, it's like after all the high-minded, we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution and the history of man. There's also just the you're having a beer and you're like, dude, these guys are pussies. Like, you really, and you're gonna let Anthony Fauci win. You're gonna let
Fuck no.
I'm Fauci. You're gonna let these limp dick guys win. I get it if we're looking at like a mountain of Vikings, and I'm like, yeah, they might kill us, dude. We're
Yeah.
looking at the weakest people in the
Yeah.
war. We're looking at a George Soros, a 99-year-old Henry Kissinger. You sneeze in the same room as him, he's dead. You look
Yeah.
at these people; these are weak. These aren't even beta males. These are some
Worst kind of nerds.
they are, and they're not even like cool nerds. Elon's a cool
Nah.
nerd. These are people
Yeah.
that hide behind the shadows. They hide behind
Yeah.
censorship. They hide
And
behind
Klaus
wall.
Schwab, is he not the epitome of Dr. Evil?
He's a not. His grandfather was a literal Nazi. He was a Nazi
Yes, sir.
industrialist. Look at who we're fighting, and then just imagine that we open up a time machine and some GIs from World War II step out, who were actually, if you ever read Eisenhower's letter to like all the soldiers right after we declared war, is like goes on to say, this is like we are fighting on the side of God Almighty. But then he says, he goes, beware, your enemy has advanced weapons and is battle hardened. They were fighting actual men. The the uh the kamikaze Japanese who believe their leader is a god, or the technologically advanced Germans using meth who
Hmm.
believe that they were superior. You were fighting actual foes, like
Yeah.
actual guys. That's like, hey man, we might not win. Look at who we're fighting now. They have to hide behind drag queens reading to children.
Oh,
They
don't get me
have to
started.
they have to hide behind normalized pedophilia. Love is love. Age is just an age. Look at what we're fighting.
Yeah.
If that doesn't get your blood boiling, we deserve to lose.
My blood's been boiling for quite some time, and a lot of this in this book. But the issue of the day is that I'm just proud to live in a place where I can say what's on my mind, and I want to keep it that way.
Yeah, yeah, like yeah, it- and live in a place where where you can be wrong.
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah.
might be wrong. And you know what happens? The Gestapo doesn't come to my door and behead me. I lose some
Yeah.
subscribers and they go, "Hey dude, you were completely wrong. This never happened." And then I go read about it and I go, "Oh shit, I was wrong." And then you come out and do an episode, you go, "I was wrong, but now I read and now I'm better." Like, and I mean,
I've even seen Joe Rogan say I was wrong,
seen
on different issues.
seen
It's
Doctor
okay.
seen Dr. McCullough come out. I think he said on Rogan it's impossible to get COVID twice, and then he came out like 2 months later and was like, starts citing all these papers. He was like, I was wrong, but like the empirical research shows I was wrong. And you know what? People respect that, and you go,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I was wrong. I would imagine if people lived forever and there was, we didn't die, you probably have a lot of astronomers going, I thought the world was flat, and but then 100 years later, 500 years later, they created the satellite, and I was looking at it, and I'm like, that is curved. Like, it's okay. People are okay with it. Any reasonable human being will look at someone that acknowledges new data and goes, "Oh, dude, I was completely wrong. I'm so sorry." People are
But but
reasonable.
but something you just said that tweaked me, and here I go off and listening to you again. You know, California just passed this law where pedophilia is real. You know, a 21-year-old can have sex with a 14-year-old, and it's not, you know, they're not going to put them in the what do you call that database with all the
Uh,
pedophilia
uh,
people.
um, uh, Sexual predators, offenders, the
Yeah,
offenders.
there you go. What is California doing? And why are they making pedophilia legal? Why are we allowing drag queen story time to take over our schools and our libraries? And, even here in conservative Howard County, Maryland, they're having drag queen story time, even at military bases. And I'm like, why would why is it okay to make fun of, you can't say the N word, but yet you can, marginalize women by making fun of them or caricaturing them. You got some big husky 200-pound, bearded man dressed up in women's clothing. To me, that's a caricature. To me, you're making fun, you're mocking natural born women. And why people are not angry about that, I will never know.
I would say that part of free speech is you can mock people. You can, you have to have thick skin. Although drag isn't for me, I'm also for the liberty and freedom of adults. You wanna and you're an adult and you want to go to a drag more power to you.
Cool.
Not my cup of tea, more power to you. Why is it being exposed to children? And
There you
people
go.
and they'll try to characterize you. They'll say, "Oh, you're against drag queens, or you're against teaching about homosexual relationships to kids." My my best friend's uncle is gay. He's the coolest guy, and he's the most respectful guy in the world. He's a wonderful human being. He's also just fucking awesome.
My
It has
nieces
nothing to
that I was
do.
talking about, they're gay. They're wonderful people. I love
God
them to
bless
death.
you. I
Do
don't.
your thing.
Yeah, it's not that I care about kids being taught gay sex versus. Hey, I if I was taught heterosexual sex in middle school, I'm sure my dad would come in swinging because they're children. It has nothing to do with gay or straight. They're children. I'm not against drag queens.
Sexualization.
They're children. And
Yes.
people
We got
that
to
do that,
protect our kids.
and again, so you see who this enemy is. It's not a battle hardened a German army. It's not a fanatical Japanese army. These are not these are not men. These are not these are not people who are going to siege your town. They are slinking, slimy, just slithery. They're pedophile. They have to legalize it. We have to normalize it.
Using
Love
the
is
law
love.
against us.
These are not people to succumb to. I mean, for the love of God, if they beat you by definition, they are natural selection has chosen them. Maybe it's my own arrogance, but I refuse to be beat out by a Fauci or a 300-pound bearded man in a tutu saying that
Ugh,
love is love. If they
that's
beat
not
me out,
love. That's,
if they beat me out, my dead ancestors are going to disown me, and as well as they should.
I agree 100%. But let's go back to this. Okay, how does this fit in with this Bill Gates idea of reducing the population of the
Well,
earth?
I would say reduce reproductive couples, induce
There you go.
self-hatred. Well, it's not just reproduction, it's an idea of self-hatred. Part of the idea of shifting the Overton window to allowing for the reduction of the human population is not just one, physically stopping reproduction by having same-sex couples, which again, go for it, I don't care. It's not even the drop in fertility rates that we're seeing at the same exact time of the vaccine. That's
Imagine that.
doesn't take a genius. It's not just those. War can only reduce so many people. I mean, World War II, as bad as it was, including civilian deaths, was 85 million. That's a lot. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's 1% of today's population, a little over 1%. War doesn't, so that's not really an effective route. So you then have to use climate change. We are the problem, carbon footprint, right? Which that term was just like the term conspiracy theory was coined by the CIA. The
Yes,
term carbon
sir.
footprint was coined by British Petroleum after the
Right.
oil spill in the early 2000s to
They
shift the
are the
burden.
villain.
Yeah,
They are the villain, and they're telling us that we're the villain,
yeah. Well,
and we're buying it.
it's because that's what a villain would do. Like,
Yeah.
what's the the parable or whatever? Like a scorpion got on the back of the turtle or to swimming across the pond, and
Yeah.
says, "You're just gonna stab me when we're there." And he says, "No, I won't." And then they get there and he stabs him. And he goes, "You always knew I was a scorp." Whatever it is. Yeah. Surprise, surprise. The villains are telling us we're the villains, and they know they're the villain. Yeah, that's what a villain does, right?
That's what a
So
villain does.
yeah, yeah.
And and it's funny you mentioned something again. I'm keying on your words, but we think the same way, so you're going to get a lot of that from me. The issue of the day is the replacement rate for our population in the United States is something like zero children per couple.
Hmm.
We're not having kids. We're down to 1.6 children per couple. We can't replace our population at that point. So eventually we go away.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. We're not having kids anymore. We're not having normal relations. And in a generation, it's going to really tell. And then again, you got the same problem, a worse problem in China. You've got that one child policy that they instituted a generation ago. So you got like millions upon tens of millions, like last check, 39 million people, males that have no women.
Yeah.
So they're not making kids and their population's falling, and we're starting to get older.
Yeah.
So with all that said, are they trying to gradually speed up the demise of the human race? I don't know.
I think they are. And it's kind of one of those things where, like, you can maybe get someone on board with the military industrial complex. And once you start talking about the fourth, industrial revolution, World Economic Forum, they're like, all right, it's a little weirder. There's another level above that. And it's what I truly believe. And it's just really any theme from any book I've read or any news art. The underlying theme I can really understand is there are pro-human forces and anti-human forces, and I'm very specific to say human. It's not pro-Chinese, pro-American, it's not nationalism. It's also not pro-Christian versus pro-Muslim versus, it's not religion. It is pro-human versus anti-human. And you might
Agreed.
think at the surface level it goes to anti-human, you want to get rid of humans. Well, that's self-defeating. No, I was talking to a guy yesterday who actually kind of set up well, and he was like, transhumanism, where we merge with machines and leave behind humanity. There's two ways to look at that. It's the next evolution of man, or it's the end of man. And I guess in my mind, I'd always had it as Armageddon being an asteroid or a nuclear war. But no, once you view transhumanism and the sort of ascension of a select elite, that's no different than the end of humanity. You know, retirement's retirement. You put in your time with the U.S. military, and you retired. I can go win a scratch off and be retired. Although one of us earned it,
Mm.
retirement's still retirement, right? So it is what it is. So how does that play into pro-human, anti-human, which I think is like the grand thesis of it all? Military industrial complex, world, like those are all subsets of this. The pro-human versus anti-human agenda is you have a group of people that are one, uh, they don't act like traditional human, they prey on children,
Yes.
and it is self-hatred, and that is what they want to be engendered. We're seeing the beginning of it, right? We've seen the beginning of it over the last maybe 5 years, the really ramping up of the it's evil to be white, it's evil to be born white, which is, I mean, the definition of racism, right? I mean, things you can't control. It's the opposite of MLK. They dream of a day where people will be judged by the color of their skin and not the content of their character. But I think it's going to be expanding. It's not because they want to remove whites and bring in a new, no. I think it will soon be expanding to what is global warming? What is carbon footprint? It
What
is
is a woman?
these are all things to make you not hate whitey and be pro black. They want you to hate being human.
Human.
Indian, Brazilian, Pakistani,
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
Madagascar, whoever's down in
Yes.
Antarctica, whatever. Carbon footprint. You are damaging the earth. They want
You
you
are
to,
at fault.
you are at fault. And just like if you don't get the COVID vaccine, you're killing grandma. And if you're against the Patriot Act, you're pro 9/11. Like a villain does, they take a
Mm-hmm.
high minded, oh, you don't want the earth to continue? Mother Earth, you don't want the dolphins to continue? They're taking the most precious thing and they're hiding behind it, just like they're hiding behind the idea of the freedom to love to actually enact pedophilia. They are hiding behind protecting the earth is what they're doing to get rid of humans. They want you gone because they are reaching a point in human history where they no longer need you and they can
Exactly.
ascend to whatever they want. There is no, and I'm not even against the idea of evolution emerging with machine. Again, like the H bomb, I think we're reaching an unavoidable. This is just what happened. We at some point we stopped swinging from trees and we started standing up straight. Like evolution happens. I'm not blind to that. I understand that there is a future of humanity that is probably unrecognizable to us today. However, I think there is a group of people that are deeply anti-human. They are anti any belief in God. They are anti loving yourself and not just because they want to get rid of you because you're carbon. I think it's deeper. I think it's they don't want you to love yourself for your own flaws. They don't want
They don't want you to exist in
it,
this form.
well,
And
very clearly that, yeah.
You mentioned Ray Kurzweil earlier,
Yeah.
and his philosophy is that we will evolve ourselves through technology to where we can live for 300
Forever.
years.
Well, he wants forever.
Yes,
He wants immortality.
exactly. So who gets to make that decision?
Well, who gets
Only
to
those who can afford it.
well, who gets to live forever? Yeah.
Exactly. Who makes that call?
Yeah.
Certainly not me.
So then you got to start wondering. And it's like, and you try not to like jump into these, but they're kind of unavoidable where you start going like, man, this is hitting on some like biblical themes of
Yeah.
I mean, truly like Adam and Eve, or in all through all the through Gilgamesh, through the
The
Talmud or
Sumerian
the Torah. There's
tablets, the whole
all
deal.
religion. I'm not just attacking Christian. I mean all religions.
Yes.
You are getting to these,
Every
yes, the themes of becoming like the gods
yes.
of usurping I mean even Greek, right? They climb Mount Olympus and try to remove Zeus tries to remove Kronos and Kronos eats him or something. We're getting into some like
The
Revelations end time, like the
Genesis
arrogance of
6
man.
type stuff. There you go.
Yeah.
And people are not getting this. And what bothers me is, where's the curiosity? Where is, I mean, why are people not interested in this? Now, I grew up Southern Baptist,
Yeah.
going to church every Sunday. You're going to hell if you breathe, that sort of thing.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And all those many long deployments, after a while I started reading the Bible for myself, and I found some very interesting things in there. And I don't want to turn this into some kind of crazy podcast and get you kicked off of Rumble too,
I,
but the issue of the day is people need to read their religious books, because um, in every culture that there is, there's a flood story, and there's a
every single
story,
one. Every single one.
every single one.
Yeah.
And the Hopi have a flood story. Obviously, our own Bible. The Indians have their Manu story, and on and on and on. They're pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, who's to say that who's manipulating all this? Where are they driving us to? And then you remember the movie The Matrix.
Yeah.
Are we real or are we simulated?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're getting into some deep stuff here. I mean, very well, I could be sitting in some pod
Oh,
with some kind
sure.
of hitch up in my neck, just like Neil. I
Sure.
don't know.
Oh, what? Yeah. I mean, what's real? Perception is reality. Am I a brain in a vat or not? No, but these are unavoidable, much like the Neuralink or the hydrogen bomb. As you get to these higher and higher orders of ideas, from plugging in a car to what is money to, what is the consolidation of power to pro-human, anti-human to the transcendence of even nationalism, but rather people that, as my buddy Stolio, he says, the carbon they want to reduce is you.
Yeah.
You eventually have to zoom all the way out. And then, well, if you're going to zoom all the way out, you also have to look as far back as you can. You can't just look back to Eisenhower or Smedley Butler. You can't just look back to the Renaissance. You got to go, what's the earliest written texts? What are the
Yeah.
oldest stories passed down? And it's the religious texts across all cultures, across all continents. You have to go to the religious texts. That's just what it is.
Why would
And
you go to the trouble of putting your words in stone? That means you want them to last,
these are the
as in the
stories that
Sumerian.
lasted above everything else.
Yes.
I have a handful of, I'm not a very physically sentimental person. There's a handful of things I keep. I have the paddles from my fraternity. I have I have like an old cigar box my grandpa gave me. I have a CD that my deceased brother gave me when I was like 10. Very few things, but there's a reason why I still bring them with me through thick and thin, is because these are the few things that really do matter to me. Why would you put these stories down in a time when you are still a hunter gatherer or you are at best getting wheat? Why would you do something that is not energetically efficient? You are wasting precious
No.
calories taking a stone and hitting or taking a rock and hitting a stone, both of which could be used for weapons. But instead, you
Yes.
are finding a reason to put it on here. And before you had these, you went out of your way to orally pass down stories. Hey, kids, I don't know where you're going to go. I don't even know if this tribe's going to survive. But above everything else, on top of, you got to find food, you got to find water, and you got to find a mate and a place to sleep. You also got to remember these important stories about a flood, about a wrathful God. And in many ways, there is a very valuable infrastructure to all of them. They all basically say, treat others the way you want to be treated. Don't covet your
There
neighbor.
you
Don't
go.
steal shit. Very good, basically basic software for the human, but they all talk about a flood, and they all also talk about like the arrogance of man trying to usurp the creator. And
Yes.
I mean,
A recurring story.
is that not where we are going?
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Graham Hancock, sounds like
Yeah.
you've been,
I love Graham
yeah.
Hancock and Randall Carlson.
Why have they been suppressing his ideas for 40 years? They don't, I mean, he's got this wonderful Netflix special, which I
Yeah.
watched and enjoyed greatly. And the mainstream archaeologists are like poo-pooing it. He's a terrible person, yada, yada, yada. But who built all these pyramids?
Yeah. The water, the who are the doctors, uh uh Robert, is it Kosh or
Baval,
no, he there's in his book Fingerprints of the Gods and Magicians of
the
the
guy from
Gods.
Boston, Boston University,
Robert, is it Robert
cop,
Schock?
shot, I
Yeah,
think.
the rain marks on the Sphinx, and oh no,
Yeah,
undeniable,
the science is there,
yeah,
but they try to poo-poo it. They try
fingerprints
to,
of the gods, yeah,
yes, I've read that
yeah,
and
the Puri
pretty much
Rise
all this
map,
stuff.
Admiral
There you have it.
Hapgood from the early 50s, and like they had a map of Antarctica, like from 500 years ago. But only
Yes.
just 2 years prior did like the British Expeditionary Force use sonar to map the coast of Antarctica because it was and still is under 2 miles of ice. And they're like, well, how did they get this? And then they go back and they find out the Piri Rise map is like, he was like, oh, this isn't mine. We found it in like ancient Egypt. And you're like, wait, what the
Yeah.
fuck? And it's like, it dates all the way back to, so you have to wonder, like, well, it's the same thing as censorship.
Yeah.
You got to maintain the narrative and maintain the story.
Right.
I think this is the very bedrock. I mean, forget censorship and like the Hunter Biden laptop. This is like this is the oldest fake news, right? And
Yes.
we exist within this paradigm of the Fertile Crescent is the birthplace of civilization, and then we invented the wheel and blah blah blah. It is that very story. It's almost poetic, is starting to dissolve, and you have
Yes.
to wonder, why are they? It's one, I get it when you're trying to censor me because I'm talking about stuff that harms Pfizer. Yeah, of course you're gonna. Why wouldn't you? Well, who, like, what, we have big oil and but there's no big archaeology. It's not like it's $1 billion industry. So why the hell are they going out of their way to censor Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson? You have to
Well,
wonder why.
well, let
Why
me
are
ask you
you?
this. Think about this. Okay, let's go back to Tesla. Nikola Tesla.
Yeah,
Nikola. So he apparently developed a power source, or better yet, discovered a power source that would basically have left oil and fossil fuels obsolete.
yeah. You want to bet?
And
Yeah,
sometime back before World War II, our government broke into his compound in New York and basically confiscated all his stuff. And that man who has invented all these wonderful things, probably the microphone that you're using right there, and all these other things, died penniless.
yeah. Died
Yeah.
Penny. Yeah,
So the idea of free energy, I mean, it's been proven that most of the pyramids that I've studied, including the pyramids at Giza, emit energy.
well, that was
And
his other
maybe
big thing, is
there you
were
go.
these monuments, or were these like ancient power plants? And for anybody that's listening to us and rolling your eyes, go read about Nikola Tesla. The day he
It's
died, yeah,
documented.
the FBI came into his apartment. I think his body is still warm, and under a National Security Act, uh, they confiscated everything, and it should have been Immigration Services because technically he's an immigrant, but it was the FBI, and they took all of his papers and brought it to the, I guess, the Office of Naval Intelligence. If you really want to go down an even deeper rabbit hole, do you know who was in charge of the office to overlook his papers? Was Donald Trump's uncle, which is
Yeah,
just a
imagine that coincidence.
whole other rabbit hole to go down. But I
It's all
think
documented.
I think what we're seeing is everything There's a reason why it's all being maintained. They want to maintain the prison we live in. And
Yes.
because truth will always come out. Maybe it's that the government uses Twitter to censor and 5 years goes by and then the truth comes out. Sometimes it takes 10,000 years,
Sometimes.
but eventually the line comes out. And you start finding old maps, you start finding old tablets going, what the fuck is this? This goes
Well, let
against
me
every.
ask you,
Yeah.
if there was no reason to have to pay for the energy that we use, how could you,
How
if you're
could you
as an
enforce a
elite,
petrodollar?
exactly.
Well, and then that's the crux of it all. Is you go, why would they? It all comes back to a mechanism of enforcement, which is then you have to wonder, is this the last bottleneck that we haven't broken through yet? We broke through the nuclear bottleneck. We survived the Cuban Missile Crisis bottleneck. We survived the bioweapons bottleneck, right? We outlawed the chemical ones right after World War One. We've survived a lot of the bottlenecks. But I think the final bottleneck is probably going to be, and I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetimes or even our grandchildren's lifetimes, but it seems to be the dominion or power over others for no. I'm
Yeah.
not some commie. I'm all for capitalism. Hey man, you provide a good, you better get paid for it. But the
There
idea
you
that you
go.
want to keep a petrodollar going simply to project force over someone, it seems like that is maybe the last bottle, much like the opposable thumb or standing up straight or the
Hmm.
agricultural revolution. I think the next great leap forward in mankind won't even necessarily be Neuralink. It'll be a shift in our own mindset of, do I need to control others, or can we all act autonomously? Do we need, what happens when you get rid of the petrodollar? Well, we're all free to do whatever. So that is what I think could be the next bottleneck, is how do we break free of that? And I kind of think more and more that Elon Musk getting us to Mars isn't because he wants us to be a multiplanetary species. I'm looking at it more and more as he's surveilled the playing field and gone, this place is hopelessly corrupt. I
Yes.
think he's looking at it the same way the original pilgrims were like, hey, why would we leave England, the UK, the most advanced place in the world? Why do we get on ships that are rickety, that might not survive the journey? And if we do get there, we don't even know if it'll be hospitable. We didn't know if the Native Americans were going to come attack us. Why did they do it? Well, eventually you go, they were so sick of being ruled over that they said, fuck it. Anything else is better than this. The idea of freedom is
Freedom.
more valuable than anything. So then you have to go, why would people now, where you have the internet and Uber Eats and Netflix, why would they be considering getting onto a rickety rocket that might blow up, might not survive 9 months through interplanetary space? And if you do survive, you land on a red, dusty planet.
That needs to be
Well,
terraformed.
yes. Well, someone 500 years from now might not understand it. Versus if you came back now and listened to this whole podcast, you'd go, "Oh, there was a group of pedophile tyrants ruling the world."
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually you reach a point where you go, "Oh, I get where the pilgrims are coming from. Fuck these people. Let's get on our own ships. Deuces, I'm out of here." And if that
Out.
is the case, it'll take 300 years, but America will rise over Great Britain. In 300 years, Mars might be the power of the solar system, and the world could just be some backwater. And
Tommy,
well,
let me take you somewhere else that you mentioned.
all right,
You were talking about the royal family.
yeah,
Why is it that they have, they're arguably the richest people on the planet, and that all the royal families of Europe are related?
yeah,
They're they marry each other's cousins.
yeah,
And so no matter what we do, they're all cousins.
yeah,
The term blue blood, do we not see a pattern here? I do, because maybe I'm just a conspiracy theorist.
yeah,
Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but I know patterns when I see them. And why are we as Americans concerned with the goings on of Harry and Meghan and that sort of stuff and the drama that comes from that? It's a
yeah,
show. It's kabuki theater.
yeah.
The people that are in charge are going to remain in charge. Bread and circuses for everyone while we take all the money for ourselves.
I do, and I think that I think you got this Elon Musk character who's just going, fuck that. We're gonna,
He's an outlier.
he's a real life Iron Man who, yeah, you go, he's a guy that I think if you brought back the founding fathers, they'd be like, yeah, that guy's all right. Like,
Yeah, I believe
yeah,
so.
he's got his powdered wig and musket and he's going, fuck these people. We're getting out of here. And it's worth the fight. Again,
Yeah,
dude, do you really want to lose to these anti-human pedophiles? Like, no, no, I refuse to believe that our best days aren't ahead of us.
I
It's
believe
just,
our best days are in front of us, but you got to fight for what's yours.
oh, that doesn't mean it's easy.
It ain't easy.
I can look at the weights I lift in the gym now, and I can say my strongest days are ahead of me. That doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of grueling days in the gym ahead of me, but it just means that my strongest days are ahead of me. It's the
Amen.
same thing here. Is I truly
Yeah,
believe our
brother.
best days are ahead of me or ahead of us. But with that,
Yeah,
Berney, I got to wrap this one up because I got another guest coming
brother.
on 2 minutes. But this was
Man, you're awesome.
you're awesome, man. This was absolutely delightful. These are my favorite episodes. We started with the B-21 Raider and we ended up with the Great Pyramids and Nikola Tesla. To me, that
Dude, I
is
can
a
talk about this stuff all day,
it's
anytime.
fantastic. I urge you to continue down your post retirement rabbit hole. I like what I see, and we will resume. I texted you. We've got a date in the books for January,
Yeah.
which will be about your
Yeah.
book, and
Right.
but between now and then, man, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Same to you, brother. Thank you so much.
Much love, my friend. Stay safe, everybody. God bless.